There's a pattern I've seen over and over in the limo industry. Operators spending money on ads, getting real leads, phones ringing, and still not growing. This video is about why that happens and how to fix it. Most established operators I talk to believe the path to growth is more leads, more calls, bigger budget, better ads, and I get it. That's what most people think growth looks like. But after years of running marketing campaigns for limo and black car companies, here's what I've learned. The companies that grow almost never start by spending more money on ads. They start by fixing what happens after their phone rings. Because right now your business is probably leaking revenue in ways you can't see. And more leads just makes the leak bigger. Back in 2019, I tested 60 limo companies' follow-up process by submitting fake leads and tracking what happened. This year, we went even deeper and listened to over 10,000 recorded sales calls across different companies in different markets. I've tracked which operators grow and which ones stall, and after doing this for years, the patterns are possible to ignore. So in this video, I'm gonna go through the 5 biggest leaks I've found in the limo business. These aren't guesses. This is what I've seen from the inside, the CRM, the actual phone calls themselves, and every single one of these is fixable without spending another dollar on ads. Let's get into it. Back in 2019, I had a question that was keeping me up at night. I kept hearing the same thing from operators everywhere. The leads aren't good, too many tire kickers. But our clients' ad campaigns were thriving. Legitimate leads were coming in, something wasn't adding up. So I decided to find out for myself. I had my team submit fake quote requests to 60 different limo companies, all established businesses, running real ad campaigns, same day, same time. Then we tracked how long it took each one to respond and how they responded. The results were eye-opening. The average follow-up time for the initial quote, over 30 minutes. 80% used email only. Only 12% called the lead back. Only 8% sent a text message. Now, this was 2019. And virtually nobody, and I'm talking almost zero, had any kind of post-quote follow-up sequence. You give someone a prize, they don't respond, and that's the end of the conversation. Forever. Now, here's what struck me. The companies that were winning, the ones that had the strongest returns on their ad spend, they were following up within 10 minutes using all 3 channels: email, text, and phone. A handful did all 3 in under 10 minutes, and not surprisingly, those were the companies with the best ROI. Their owners were still paying close attention to the process, even if they weren't doing it personally. That's key. That was 7 years ago, and I wish I could tell you the industry fixed this. It didn't. When we analyzed over 10,000 sales calls this year on a completely different set of companies, we found the same pattern. Roughly 87% of the calls didn't result in a booking. There was no follow-up path established, no quote confirmed, no email discussed, no next step. The call just ends and the lead vanishes. Think about what that means if you're running $1 million plus operation. You've got staff, you've got marketing spend, you've got a CRM. And on nearly 9 out of 10 calls that don't convert, nobody sets up a reason for the prospect to come back. That's not a lead quality problem, that's a process problem. It's the same problem I've seen operators struggle with over the last decade. And what we found next was even worse. Point 2, nobody's asking for the booking. Remember, these aren't mom and pop shops. These are established businesses with real teams, real volume, and real money on the line. And across the board, the patterns were the same. Here's the big one. On only 11% of the 10,000 calls we analyzed did anyone attempt to ask for a booking. Not a bad close, not they tried and the customer said no. No close attempt at all, 89% of the time. On the calls that didn't convert, it's even worse. Nearly 97% ended without anyone asking for the sale. 6,047 calls out of 6,260 just ended. Now, here's what most operators assume. They will think, well, people will always compare our prices to Uber. The data says otherwise. The number one reason people didn't book wasn't price, it was indecision. 21% had some version of, let me think about it, I need to check with my group, I'll get back to you. Price objections, fewer than 9%. And Uber came up on 2.5% of the calls, 2.5%. Your customers are not comparing you to Uber. They're not saying you're too expensive. They're saying, I'm not sure yet. And nobody on your team is helping them get sure. And here's what really stood out to me. Booked calls average 5 0.4 minutes, non-book calls 3 minutes. The difference isn't small talk, it's whether anyone actually tried. The companies booking at high rates are investing time once the lead is qualified. They're asking questions, they're building value, they're recommending the right vehicle. The companies that aren't booking, they quote a number and hang up. And I want to put a number on this that makes it real. Across the companies we audited, over the phone booking rates range from 32% to 88%. Same industry, same types of leads. The gap between the worst and the best is entirely about what gets said or what doesn't get said on the phone. If you're booking 35% and someone is booking 85% with similar leads, you don't have a marketing problem, you have a phone problem. If you want to learn more about our findings in that sales call report, check out this video where I do a deep dive in our analysis so that you can leverage it for your own business. It's something you can share with your team to start booking more rides from the leads you're already paying for. All right, let's get back to it. So the data is clear, but the real question is what separates the companies at the top of the range from the ones at the bottom? It starts with one habit. Point 3, you don't know your numbers. I had an operator reach out, established company, Midwest market, solid business. He was getting nearly 400 leads a month. At the end of the month, he texted me, results haven't been what we were hoping. So I jumped on a call with him, pulled up his CRM. Out of the 380 leads that month, only 20 had been categorized. 20 out of 380. He didn't know how many were quoted, how many booked, how many were lost, how many were just sitting there untouched. 360 leads in limbo. And then I looked at one specific lead, a sprinter inquiry, 5 hours, probably a $900 job. The entire communication was 3 letters for a $900 opportunity. And look, I get it. When you've been doing this for years, you may not be as hungry. You've got a team. You're managing the business from outside the driver's seat. But that doesn't mean the leads stop needing attention. It just means you need systems to make sure they get it. Now compare that to another client of mine. He's tracking every single lead in his CRM, entering booking amounts, marking quoted versus booked, and here's the real payoff. His data feeds back into his ad account. So Google is learning who his ideal customer actually looks like. This is why this is so important. Not just who clicks, not just who calls, who actually books and for how much. His return on ad spend has been climbing every single month, not because he's spending more, but because the system is getting smarter. I've talked to thousands of operators about their marketing, and the number one thing that predicts whether they'll actually grow isn't their market, their fleet, or their budget. It's whether they actually track what happens after the lead comes in. Because if you don't know your close rate, you can't fix it. And if you can't fix it, more leads just means more waste. Tracking your numbers matters, but every now and then the numbers surprise you because a single lead can be worth more than your entire ad budget for the month. Point 4, the $20,000 booking. One of my clients in Arizona, Jacob, got a form submission for a $125 airport transfer. Most operators would have auto-quoted it or sent a quick text and moved on. Jacob called. Turns out the person was a coordinator for a national broadcast network covering a major event. They'd submitted a quote form late the night before. It came in looking like a simple airport pickup. Jacob called, asked questions, found out what they really needed. That one form lead turned into 5 buses, 3 sprinters, and 15 SUVs, nearly $20,000 in revenue from one phone call on what looked like a basic airport transfer. Now Jacob's got a method. He calls every lead, and I mean every lead. He spends about 30 seconds to a minute on the initial call, just enough time to feel it out. If someone's a price shopper, I can get an Uber for that, which doesn't happen that much. He tags them as a window shopper in the CRM and moves on. Doesn't build a quote, doesn't waste time. But when he gets a real lead, he invests. He finds out what they actually need, not just what they filled out on the initial quote form. That $20,000 booking didn't happen because of luck. It happened because he picked up the phone on a lead that most operators would have auto-quoted and forgotten about. And you best believe Jacob will nurture that client and get even more repeat business from them. I've seen this pattern over and over. The operators who close the biggest deals aren't getting different leads. They're doing more with the leads everyone else throws away. And that brings us to the one structural change that ties all of this together. So your team's follow-up needs to be faster. Your team needs to be closing on the phone. Your CRM needs to be updated. And you need to treat every qualified lead like it could be a $20,000 whale. And there's one more thing. And honestly, this might be the fastest lever you can pull. Point 5, pay your phone team like salespeople. Here's something that drives me insane. I'll work with an operator spending 4, $6,000 a month to make the phone ring, the leads come in, and the person answering the phone is being paid $10 or $15 an hour with zero commission. Or even worse, and I've gotten this, they're paying per phone call. Think about what that means. You're spending thousands of dollars to generate opportunities, and the person responsible for converting those opportunities into revenue has zero financial incentive to do so. If they send a quote and the person doesn't book, they actually do less work. So booking actually creates more work for them. So you're incentivizing them to not try. So do this. Stop calling them reservationists. Stop calling them dispatchers. They're inside sales reps, and a term I prefer more is transportation consultants. And if you're not paying them like they are transportation consultants or inside sales reps, don't be surprised when they act like order takers instead of closers. Here's what I've seen work. The operators who have figured this out, maybe they're doing some sort of a draw, or they're doing base plus commission, setting up some sort of tiered incentive, creating those inside sales roles. Those are the operators that are closing 30 to 40% of the jobs. The ones that are paying flat or hourly on a per call basis are closing 10 to 15%. Now, there are a few ways to structure this. One approach is base and add commission. Take someone from $10 an hour to $5 to $6 an hour and give them a percentage of every booking they close. You want the upside to be real. If they crush it, they should be able to make 20 to 25 an hour. It has to be exciting enough to change their behavior, and very likely even more than that. Another approach is the draw. They get a guaranteed minimum, say $200 a week, and they earn commission on top. If their commission exceeds the draw, great. If it doesn't and it's a slow week, they get the minimum. It protects them while keeping the incentive alive. You can also tier it. Up to $20,000 a month in bookings, they get 7.5%. Over $20,000, they get 10%. Over $30,000, 12.5%. The more they close, the more they earn per booking. The specifics depend on your volume, your margins, and your team, but the principle is the same. If the person answering your phones has no real financial reason to close the deal, they won't close the deal, at least not consistently, and not at the level your marketing spend deserves. I've watched this single change, adding a commission structure, turn a company's phone team from a cost center into a revenue engine. It's the fastest lever you can pull, and it makes everything else we've talked about in this video actually stick. All right, let's bring it home. Your business is already generating leads. The phone is ringing. People are calling. They're interested. They have money to spend. The question isn't always whether or not your marketing is working. The question is whether your operation is converting those leads at the level it should be. You might not need more leads. You might just need to stop losing the ones you already have. Fix the follow-up. Fix the phones. Track what's happening. And pay your team to actually close. Get those 5 things right, then let's talk about scaling your ads. Because when the foundation is solid, that's when marketing stops being an expense and starts being the best investment you've ever made. Thanks for watching. If this hits home, drop a comment and let me know. Hit a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you on the next one.